That's true. Naked Palpatine.
Oh, you pick that one. Fresh out of the clone tank, nude Palpatine is my
Well, that's the first thing I think of when you say Dark Empire Palpatine.
Hello everybody, and welcome back to the Star Wars Expanded Universe, narrated by Disney or Clone Lucasfilm, whichever way you slice it, Legends. And today, yet again, for my second time through, I have hit the epitome of the Expanded Universe. I have reached the peak. There's nothing else in the Expanded Universe that surpasses or goes behind it. Well, I mean, everything goes behind it, but even Darth Plagueis, which is arguably a top 3 Expanded Universe work, if we're counting the entirety of all 19 books of this series, then for sure, New Jedi Order beats out even that. That's where we're at. We have gotten to New Jedi Order yet again. You know me, I'm a staunch defender of stories that take place after this, because they did touch my heart, and I will get into that in the future. That will be the more controversial videos, because pretty much everybody, for the most part, is on the same opinion of these books. There are some detractors who say their stories end with, Hand of Thrawn and maybe Young Jedi Knights, but those people, they just want to be happy with their lives. They don't want anything depressing to happen, but they're missing out on some peak storytelling. But it's understandable. And I love stories. There are some stories post this that I really enjoy, Legacy of the Force being one of them. And I do think it is a really good story. But there's no debate over the fact that this is the best the EU has to offer. Now, I will always recommend to you, if you're watching this video and you have not gone through the Bantam era, which means every book that takes place after Return of the Jedi, I highly recommend you go back and do that. Do you need those to enjoy this? No. But will your experience be a million times enhanced if you had? Yes. Seriously. There are certain characters in here that you're not going to care about at all unless you've read, like Jedi Academy or something. This series this is the big endgame event, like Avengers. Like, you need to have read the stuff that came prior to fully appreciate what these books have to offer. But with enough dibble-dabbling out of the way, we have Book 1 of the New Jedi Order, Vector Prime by R.A. Salvatore. Now, he is an acclaimed fantasy author. He's written a lot of fantasy novels. This is really his only Star Wars work. Now, because of the big thing that happens at the end of this book, or near the end of this book, a lot of people treated R.A. Salvatore rather harshly. So he kind of got to have a second chance when the Episode 2 novelization for Attack of the Clones came out. He was allowed to do the novelization for that book. So that's his 2 contributing factors to this universe. But yes, the Expanded Universe, the New Jedi Order, is a collection of 19 books written by different authors to compile this big epic event across the media. But before I get into that, I have 2 quick things to mention. In Star Wars Tales, yes, I know it's been a while since we've done that. Number 14, we have Apocalypse Endor. So, you know how everybody always jokes in Episode 6 for being more lighthearted, talking about the Ewoks and how cute they are, the little tiny, Care Bears, or the fudge you want to call them. Also, I got my coffee. Well, there's this ex-Imperial in a bar, and people are making fun of him because he got beaten in Endor. He survived to tell the tale, but he got beaten in Endor, not even due to the rebellion, but due to a bunch of Ewoks. And the short story basically just shows a bunch of Ewoks doing horrible things to the Imperials that actually make them seem pretty scary, like bloody and everything. Not super bloody, but there is some blood in there. And so you go, oh, yeah, they are a force to be reckoned with, so... It's a kind of silly story, though. I mean, it's not silly. The subject matter is Ewoks, like, murdering a bunch of Imperials. But at the same time, it's rather silly to see these little Care Bears doing this. So it was fun in that aspect. And it's a decent little thing. Do you need this? No, but it's something you can read. Now, we also have The Crystal, which was a short story in Star Wars Gamer number 5 by Elaine Cunningham, and this short story mostly focuses on Jaina. And it's a pretty decent little story that, takes place right before the events of, not right before, but takes place before the events of Vector Prime. Now, Jason, I have been explicitly clear in my review so far that Jason has had a particular character throughout. Or at least as far as Young Jedi Knights is concerned, that was definitive, that's who he is. The kids themselves never really had a character in the Bantam era. In the Crystal Star, we did have some things established that remain consistent throughout any version of Jason you go to. In the Crystal Star, Anakin was the more introspective, quiet, mathematical computer guy. Jaina was the more hot-headed pilot. I mean, she wasn't really a pilot at the time, she was a kid, but she was more, mechanical savvy. She was really smart with physical things like cars or ships, whereas Anakin was more computers, software. And then Jason, he liked animals. He was good with animals. That was his thing. Young Jedi Knights established, a little bit more about him. Like, it harped more on that aspect of him with the animals. But what it also established is that he is a comedian. He likes to joke around. Now, whether there's something deeper to that underneath the surface, where maybe it starts off as a joke and then leads more to a coping mechanism, we don't have any stories depicting that. All I know is we have a set thing with Jason throughout 14 young adult novels. And the Jason we see in Vector Prime, and I will stand by this, I don't care what you tell me, I don't care what you reply with in the comments, I'm right, you're wrong, no matter what you tell me. I'm a stubborn bastard on this, I'm sorry, you will not convince me otherwise, but feel free to try, but you won't. Jason in Vector Prime might as well be Jason. He's not the same character. Now, to be fair, this short story here starts that. We barely get any Jason in this story. It's not even really about Jason. But we do see Jason as being much more inquisitive, much more like the Jason we will see moving forward. That being said, we still don't see that transition. Now, another thing that I got it into before we get into the actual novel. So, the last 3 books in Young Jedi Knights claim that Jason is 16 years old, but it also claims that he is 24 ABY, which means he'd still be about 15. So whether that was a Kevin J. Anderson error or not doesn't really matter. The point is that it doesn't mention any birthdays passing or anything. So either they are 16 actually in Crystal Reef, and it was the dating that was wrong, but their ages are correct, or the dating is wrong and they're actually 15. That debate is something that can be had. Regardless, though, their birthday didn't just pass, which means they've been 15 for a while or 16 for a while. Either way, it doesn't matter, because when we get to Vector Prime, Jason and Jaina are still 16, which means it has to be less than a year that the time has passed, because they're still 16. So, in 6 months, Jason changed like that. And it is a legitimate issue. I don't care what you tell me otherwise. You can't just hand wave it away. If you're going to say that darkness is an issue, man up, accept your responsibilities, accept what you say, and say that this is also a problem. Now, don't misconstrue me. I absolutely love and adore this book. Vector Prime, All New Jedi Order, is my favorite part of the expanded universe. And Jason, specifically, within these 19 books, is one of my favorite aspects of the entire series. That being said, it is very inconsistent in his character take, and simply sweeping it aside as puberty is not enough for me. I've changed and evolved a lot, but not within 6 months. Never in my life have I fundamentally changed who I am in the span of 6 months, or so staunchly believe something under 6 months. Like, I started going to church with my friend in 7th grade. Okay, because I wanted free food. And it did not take me just 6 months to change my mind. It took me like a year of constantly questioning, constantly, talking to the pastor, being like, you're wrong about this, and then him proving me wrong. This back and forth, like a huge character development, like an entire arc to get me to where I'm at now, where I'm this religious Christian that people know online. It was a whole character arc. It wasn't... Jason never once showed any interest in politics or philosophy or the nature of the Force or his place in it ever in Young Jedi Knights, but it's suddenly just established in Vector Prime. It is an issue. I don't care what you tell me. It is a problem. Now, all that to say, it won't count, right? Because it's not official or anything. It will never count, actually. But for my own peace of mind, since I know that even if the EU gets continued, this story will not be told, me and Brennan have put it upon ourselves, me being George Lucas with the ideas, him being the one to rein me in and actually make a good story out of it, I'm going to explain, me and him are going to explain a story that takes place before the Crystal short story that explains the transition from him being how he is in Young Jedi Knights to why he's so staunchly set on this philosophy at the start of Vector Prime. And with that, I could hopefully ease my mind at least. Maybe nobody else cares, but I do. And I do see it as a problem, and I will try to rectify it as best I can. Now, I will not review that short story, because it'll be something that I helped make, and that, I'm not going to do that. But when it comes out, I will make a video letting you know that it's out, leaving a link in the description for you to check it out. So you may experience the story and let me know what you think of it, But that won't be out for a while. Anyway, on to the actual review. New Jedi Order Vector Prime. Also, if you can hear stuff in the background, that is, in fact, a fan because it is super hot in here. So I apologize. So, what to say? It is a new era of the galaxy. Borsk Fela has taken the control of the Republic. He's become Chief of State. Now, we did read a fan fiction, but that doesn't count. So the events of that story are not canonical to this. All we know is that in between Young Jedi Knights and here, Borsk became Chief of State. And there's a lot of issues going on. There's a lot of internal politics and stuff running amok, just like there was in the prequel era, There is conflicts going on in the inner and outer rims, stuff, little minor things in the grand scheme, but still stuff that's, causing stuff within the Senate to have to be dealt with. Another thing is the Jedi Knights. Because the Jedi Knights are spread out. Luke has very staunchly allowed most of his first-year students and second-year students to kind of trudge their own path, right? They train at the academy, then they kind of go off and help people throughout the galaxy. But there's no order, there's no cohesion to any of it. They just kind of do their own thing, equipped with the teachings that Luke provided, and then they go off and do their own thing. There's nobody to really keep them in check, or to monitor their progress or anything. And the Count and the Senate has issues with that. And so Luke is considering reestablishing the Jedi Council, the one that we saw in the prequel era. Now, I was too lazy. I don't know if Episode 1 had already come out by this point. It might have. Or at the very least, drafts or scripts of it were available to the people writing this. But, because Episode 1 we learn Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, Master and Apprentice, and the Council of Episode 1. So Luke, and this actually works if you were reading the Jedi Path, these kind of like in-universe source book prior to this, because it's like Luke's been acquiring more of this information, learning more about the Jedi of old, so now he's trying to reorganize it to kind of fit that better. Because now we have, Luke taking on Jason and Anakin. And then we got Mara taking on Jaina, trying to get away from the Jedi Academy, like, school type of thing, and make it more of a one-on-one teacher sort of dynamic. So that's what he's trying to start. Lando's got his whole operations going as he always does. Jason, Jaina, and Anakin are, of course, Jedi Knights now, after the events of Young Jedi Knights and Junior Jedi Knights. And then the big end thing, which is that the Yuuzhang Vong, which, if you've been reading in chronological order like me, have been, since as early as the Old Republic, been looking to take over the galaxy. Now, what I think it was that Candace Ordo mentions in the Knights of the Old Republic game, because it's just a one-off comment, you could completely miss it if you choose to skip out on it. But, you know, Candace does mention ships very similar to the ones described in this book, and how they fought it off and it ran away. I think, if anything, during the Old Republic, that was the very first Vong scout ship ever to enter space. They weren't established or anything yet, they were just there peeking in. And when Mandalorians kicked their butt, they ran off to hide, not ready to show themselves yet, because they're beings from outside the galaxy, right? So you bring in one scout to kind of check in, and in the moment they get there, they get resistance, they start fighting, you know? It's too hostile yet, not enough information is known to launch an invasion. You don't know what you're up against. So they held off. We know during the time of the prequels, during the novel by Joe Schreiber, Maul Lockdown, while Maul's put in his prison by means of Emperor Palpatine, well, Chancellor Palpatine, actually not even Chancellor Palpatine at the time, the Senator of Naboo Palpatine, that he was fighting a Yuuzhang Vong warrior that had gotten captured. So I believe that even as early as the prequel era, the Vong were starting to integrate themselves into the culture of the Star Wars universe, and were sowing seeds of dissent and stuff within all of the Senate and within all corners of the galaxy. But then Palpatine's manipulations came through, and he became the Galactic Empire, and he made all those super weapons and all those Star Destroyers and the Death Star. And so the Vong, who may have been planning to invade near the end of the Clone Wars, decided not to, because of all the things that Palpatine had going. But then, throughout the Bantam era, our heroes destroyed every single piece of stuff that could have possibly caused any big problems for the Vong. And so they realized right then was the right time to do so, to take over the galaxy. And so here we get the first real big... Because the thing is, we've already had a bunch of Vong that have been infiltrating, you know, and living amongst this universe society for a while. We got Naminor, Yeoman Kor, who we meet in this book, you know, and a couple others. But this is the first time a real military fighting force is making its way through, and our heroes have to stop it. This was the point of no return. This was the point where things got serious. Because now, not everybody's safe. That bubble, the main character bubble that has protected people for so long, no longer exists. And all bets are off. Anybody can die now. Not even the main characters. And so, we have this big conflict. Mara is also sick with mysterious disease. She's also sick with it in the crystal, if I believe. So she got sick off screen with whatever it is that she's sick with. But we know that it has already killed a bunch of people in the New Republic, though Mara has survived still because she's, you know, so strong and awesome or whatever. But she has yet to die from this. But everybody else in the New Republic who's gotten the same thing that she has of course died. And they don't know the origins, they don't know where it comes from. Yeah, through this book, though, we get to much more defined characters for Jason, Anakin, and Jaina. We get cameos from a couple other characters. It all culminates in finale where they do defeat the oncoming storm of this first initial Vong fleet invasion, but the war is far from over because there's many more. They just happen to stop this particular incursion. There's also a massive loss in this book, which most people who have gotten into the expanded universe know about, but for those of you who may not have happened to find out about it, I don't want to spoil it for you yet. But yeah, it is absolutely a fantastic first book. It deals with a lot of politics in the Senate, a lot of things with the Jedi, a lot of different philosophies going on between Anakin and Jason arguing about things. And then the Vong are such an interesting species to explore. We will dive much more into them as the series progresses, and we will learn to understand them a lot better and their philosophies and their views. But as for this first book, R.A. Salvatore does a brilliant job of having them be so mysterious and creepy and other, right? You know, different from any villain we've ever faced before in Star Wars, a new kind of threat. Not only with the technology they use, not only with the communication stuff they use, not only with the way they talk, with the way they think. It's all new, all different. And I remember the first time I read this book and I did my review, I remember saying, when I saw the word infidel in a Star Wars book, I knew I was getting something different. But even such minor things as we also get this character Danny Kui, who's this scientist. She's working at this Exegol place, which is the same place that Yamankora Vong Infiltrator is at. And the Vong will look at her and be like, yeah, I get it by human standards. This lady is pretty or beautiful, but she doesn't have a single scar on her. She hasn't ripped her skin a bit, and all this stuff, like all this gross stuff, and it just paints this awful picture of the Vong in your mind. We get hints to their extreme hatred for all things technological, especially droids, and it's all fascinating and good. And already here I start to see why Nominor is one of my favorite villains in all of Star Wars, because even in this book, he's so interesting. And I'm so excited to read about him all over again throughout these books. But I think I'll leave it here. I'm going to get into spoilers because I want to talk about some specific things. But I have to say, if you have not read New Jedi Order, it is absolutely worth your time. But please read the Bantam era first. The only thing you don't need in that era is the Bounty Hunter War Shoji. You can gladly skip it. But please, please, please check out this series when you get the chance after you don't have to read the Bantam era, but I really suggest you do. But this is the peak of the Star Wars Expanded Universe, and it is a hell of a ride. So I hope you will check it out. If you don't want spoilers, or if you don't care about spoilers, or whatever, stick around. But if not, now's the time to go. It is a seal of approval from me. This is one of the best Star Wars Expanded Universe out there. You do need to read it. Highly recommend it. And yeah, if you don't want spoilers, then bail. So, something I wanted to mention, just to piss off Noah and anybody else who might disagree with me, which I know there are so many of you. Sorry, I'm getting a little sassy now. The Negan's coming out. It's going to be Pee-Pee Pants City here real soon. Jason has, in this book and in other places, and never fails to have disagreements with Luke. As early as this first novel, does Jason respect his uncle? Yes. Does Jason listen to his uncle in this book? Yes. But does he agree with everything that Luke believes? No. And that starts here. A 16-year-old full of pride. And people seem to think that that just evaporated. I don't remember, maybe I'll see when I do my reread, of this disappearing. But I have never remember seeing him getting over his pride. Because he's 16 here, he's done nothing really with his life, outside the stuff that he did during Young Jedi Knights, to establish the fact that he's anything on the level of Luke or anything. And yet he stands here questioning Luke at all, on anything. Thinking he knows better. What? He's 16. How dare he? But that's the thing. Then we move on to later books where he will meet somebody who he respects far more than Luke. And then he will learn things that not even Luke knows. Why wouldn't he still be like, I know better? I don't feel like that ever dropped, and I don't know where people get that idea from. Seems pretty consistent to me. It's just subtle, which apparently people don't like. That's why some people argue that Better Call Saul isn't better than Breaking Bad, because it's not as loud and bombastic and not as obvious with certain things. But subtlety can be a great thing in establishing character change. But whatever. We'll get into that as we move forward, and I continue to prove you all wrong. But there's just a little inkling there, and I will continue anytime that Jason has a disagreement or acts in a certain way that aligns with my way of thinking. I will then catalog that for later and see if that lines up with future things, just to piss you all off. And when I'm right, I won't say I told you so, but I told you so. So, Jason's character, I already kind of did this whole spiel of that before when I was doing the preamble to the short story that we're writing. So we're just going to skip past that. But yes, Jason's character is Jason in this first book. Deal with it. It's the same thing you have to do with Dark Nest. You just have to accept it. And once you accept it, it's a phenomenal story. It's great. All New Jedi Order is fantastic, but you have to accept that initial little thing. You have to look past it and go, okay, not the same character, but I like what they're doing with Jason, so I don't care. You have to. You have to. And you have to make excuses like puberty to make it sound legit, but it doesn't work. No matter how hard you try. Again, Darkness, though, 5-year jump. Jason's learned things. He's changed. Is that good enough? No. But it's a hell of a lot more than R.A. Salvatore gave me for Jason here. But that's enough of that. Let's get into the real meat of what I wanted to talk about with this particular note I wrote down, which is Jason versus Anakin. They have one of the most amazing discussions in this book about the nature of the Force, the nature of their role as Jedi within it, and it's a really phenomenal scene between Jason and Anakin where we get to see both of their philosophies come ahead. And it's really great to see. And again, despite the fact that there was no prior even hint that Jason cared about this sort of thing, it's still fascinating to read about. It was one of the highlights of the book for me. Absolutely great scene. I just want to mention that, in this book it is mentioned that Luke, Leia, and Mara are now in their 40s, which means that Lando and Han are now in their 50s, which is a little insane. And this is the thing where I mentioned where reading other books in the Bantam era would make you really appreciate this book a bit more, because Kip Durin shows up. Kip Durin from Jedi Academy is now a grown adult. He is a Jedi Knight, and he has his team of Jedi fighters that fight with him. And it's really good to see Kip and see his growth as a character. He still has many disagreements with Luke, but he's still, his entire point of being at this moment is atonement for his sins, and that's not really brought up in this book, but it's really cool to see Kip and how he's evolved since the events of the Jedi Academy trilogy. And I really wish, because we saw him for like a split second in the Young Jedi Knights books, but I really wish we'd have gotten more stories with Kip, because there's so much story potential with Kip that was just kind of missed out on, and that makes me really sad. But here's another thing that Kip has to deal with. It has to be on his conscience. We have all the things from Jedi Academy, but then the Vong attack him, and they kill all of his men, or most of his men. And so now Kip has to deal with survivor's guilt of being one of the only people to survive this like onslaught of attacks from these Vong. Another thing that we deal with is that we learn that you cannot sense the Vong in the Force. Now, of course, anybody who's read New Jedi Order already knows this, knows the backstory to that and everything that's going on with that. But it is such a new and fun and interesting thing. Like, we have the Elysia Mari, who were like, Force bubbles. You couldn't sense anything when they were around. But it's so fun to have like an entire enemy species that's just like how the Jedi normally operate. They can't. They have to adapt. They have to evolve. They have to change in order to fight this new threat. And it's just really cool to see that. And the Mara's fight with Yeoman Core, phenomenal scene. Love that. I'm not even big into action scenes or anything, but it was just cool to see that interaction. We also learned from Han, Chewie's, Anakin's point of view, because Lando sends them on a mission to go do this thing. What they learn as they go to this planet to try to help out is that the moon is falling. Freaking Majora's Mask of the, Zelda. The moon is falling, and they have to try to get off as much people as they can, from this planet so that they can leave. And then the big scene that got R.A. Salvatore in trouble with fans, even though this wasn't his decision. First big death, which is that Chewie dies saving Anakin. Anakin's being a hero. He's working with Chewie. They're saving kids. They're picking up kids, putting them up on the Falcon. But as Anakin's saving one kid, he gets hit by debris, hits him straight in the head, and he falls down, kind of knocked out. So Chewie picks up the kid, throws him onto the Falcon, picks up Anakin, throws him on the Falcon. The moon is falling faster and faster. The planet's going to be destroyed. And Anakin wakes up, gets to the front of the ship. Han wants to get Chewie, of course. And Anakin realizes, I can't. Like, if I go back, we will not have enough time to get back out. So Anakin makes the decision to leave. Han, shocked, confused, angry, sad. Chewie content. Because since he met Han, he had one purpose: to protect Han and serve his life debt. And once Han got married and had kids, that life debt extended to them as well. Chewie wasn't angry, wasn't upset with Anakin for that decision. He was content. He roared at the moon, because Chewie had survived so much, prequel era to here, and it took a moon, something planet-sized, to take him down. And he perishes. It's one of the most powerful scenes you'll ever read in a Star Wars novel. And it's still just as good second time through. Even if you know about the twist, it doesn't change the impact of that scene. Followed shortly thereafter by, "You left him! You left Chewie!" And that scene, also another powerful scene. You could see it. You could hear Harrison Ford yelling at Anakin. It was so good. Such a good and powerful scene. Later on, Anakin is distraught because his father blames him for his best friend's death. And Jason's reassurance was phenomenal. It was a great moment between two brothers, especially since they've been fighting throughout the book. You know, Jason goes, "Look, honestly and truly, Anakin, look at me." This is paraphrasing, but could you have done anything else? And when Anakin thinks about it rationally, no. And Jason says, "And it's not your fault." Do you think Chewie would have been happy with you if you tried to come back from him and then you all perished? How would Obi-Wan Kenobi felt if he had went to sacrifice himself for Luke, just for Luke to go in there and get slaughtered by Vader in 2 seconds? Would that have made his sacrifice worthy? No. And it was just a great, great moment. And this is where you see the true colors of what this series will do. And lastly, at the end of the book, we get the big main character bubble. Doesn't count anymore. It's a very meta thing, but also a very Han thing. Han mentions what we all kind of felt, because Star Wars is a fun, lighthearted adventure for the whole family. Han had gotten under this impression due to the events of the movies, 4, 5, and 6, due to the events of the thousands upon thousands of stories that take place, the Rebellion era in between episode 4 and 5, everything after episode 6, and the Bantam era. They went through so many adventures, so many trials, so many dangers, yet came out and survived on top of all of them. And subconsciously, Han had gotten to the point, just like much of us had, where he was like, he didn't say this, but he's like, main character syndrome, baby. Doesn't matter what we go through, doesn't matter what trials we go through. We may get hurt, we may, be in pain, but we'll always make it out, because we always do. We have survived insane, crazy things already. There is nothing that can stop us. We are in this bubble. Anybody within my bubble is safe. And that's me, that's Leia, that's Luke, that's Chewbacca, that's the kids, we're Lando. We are all safe because we're the main characters. Nothing can touch us. And with the realization with Chewie's death that we're not safe, that Leia could die tomorrow, Luke could die tomorrow, his kids could die tomorrow, and now his kids are growing up, and he can't stop them from being a part of this. They're going to be involved in the actions moving forward, and he can't do anything to protect them. And it terrifies him. He feels like the galaxy has never been less safe. Which is how we all feel now that Chewie's dead. And the way this series handles from his death onward, Han never gets better. He focuses up, does what he has to do to accomplish the mission in this book, but he never stops being depressed throughout the rest of the book. From the moment Chewie dies to the end, final page of the book, the grief never stops showing through, and that is brilliant. And it will only continue moving forward in other stories until he finally has a whole character arc about getting over that. But for now, he is devastated. This is his bestest friend in the entire world. Luke comes behind that, but it is Leia, Chewbacca, then Luke. That is like his order of people in his life. And Chewie's been with him through most of, the big parts of his life, and now he's just gone. And he has to live with that. Anyway, this is a start to a fantastic series. Jason's character's great. Jaina we didn't get to see too much of, but she's great too. So is Anakin. So is Luke. So is Mara. So is Yeoman Kor before he gets axed out. So is Naman Noor. So is everyone involved here. Danny Kui, I've said this a lot on the Discord servers. I don't like Danny Kui for Jason. I think she's a horrible pick. I always have. I hate her for the simple fact that R.A. Salvatore doesn't even address the fact that Jason and Tino Kal were basically a couple. They made out. He got a necklace for her. They were together. Even though they explicitly state so. But it wasn't even addressed or brought up anything. It's just, oh, now he has a crush on Danny Kui. That's why I dislike her. But yes, her as a character, she's fine. She serves her role. She serves her purpose. She's not annoying or anything. She's a perfectly fine character. I just hate that she's a thing at all for Jason. But yeah, even she's fine in here. So all around, phenomenal book. Highly recommend it. Highly, highly, highly suggest you read it. And yeah, has my stamp of approval. But up next, the grief over Chewie does not end because we read a comic book that I never read, which is the Chewbacca comic. Till then, guys, may the Force be with you.